everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, it's just me. And we're doing Psychedelics Weekly with me solo. So I'm going to run through a bunch of news, have some fun commentary for you, and probably make this one a little shorter. So first up, the thing that you probably saw all over social media was that Prince Harry, I guess a prince in England who's been booted out of the royal family. He's been in the news a ton the past week about his use of psilocybin and ayahuasca and mushrooms, booze, cocaine. What was the list? Cocaine, booze, mushrooms, and ayahuasca is what I saw. It's been on every headline. I'll link to the 60 Minutes, or sorry, what was it? CBSnews.com article, just so you don't have to go through like a New York Times paywall or something like that. I guess he was on 60 Minutes this past weekend also. So really a lot of good press for psychedelics, in my opinion. And it's just great to see somebody of that kind of stature making public claims. And he's saying it's largely he's using this stuff to confront pain of losing his mother really early in life. I think he was like 12 years old when Princess Diana was killed in that car accident. So it's about time that he's getting some healing, especially if somebody in that kind of a privileged situation. Just glad he's going this way. Yeah. So next up, my friends over at the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition, Melissa Lavasani, was recently featured on NPR's On Point podcast talking about the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition and the important work they're doing, and Melissa's why. And it's really, really cool. So check that one out. Again, NPR On Point with Melissa Lavasani. Got another bit of news. The Psychedelic Medicine Coalition. We actually just voted to have Daniel Carcillo from Wisana added to the board. So we've got Daniel as a board member at PMC now. And he's famous for being a NHL player. So a hockey player professionally for a long time. And he's doing a lot of really interesting stuff at Wisana around brain injuries. So I'm just really, really happy to be working more closely with Daniel, trying to get federal funds allocated to psychedelic research explicitly. I think that'll be really important and really helpful. Another bit of news out there. Does anybody remember Sanjay Gupta? He did a lot of really interesting, helpful media around cannabis. I think this is probably 10, 12 years ago. He's doing a bunch of TV saying how he believed it should be included. He's kind of like a very regular commentator on CNN. So that kind of press is really important. And he just, on his podcast called Chasing Life podcast, he did a whole psychedelics post, which is great. So check that out if you want to see what the more popular figures are saying. I'm sure they're urging a lot of caution, but at least they're talking about it and they're pushing it in a good direction. Yeah. Now, our friends over at Marijuana Moment, Kyle Yeager and company, they put out a really interesting rundown of nearly a dozen states in 2023 are pursuing some sort of psychedelic legislation. And this was published on January 9th. I think Illinois is also pushing something out really, really great. So we've got California, Colorado, obviously, Connecticut, Illinois, Missouri, Minnesota, Montana, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Virginia. So that's a whole mess of states. And I'm excited about Colorado because it's we already passed it, but we got a lot of work left to do to make sure the rules are good and just and progressive still. So it's really great, but just awesome to see so many bills being pushed in, measures hopefully that will lead to us either having less penalties for psychedelic possession and or full on decriminalization, if not legalization in some capacity or another. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. Yeah. So next up, Virginia actually even had some press on its own. This article is coming from, what's this website here? VirginiaMercury.com. The headline is Virginia lawmaker proposes legalizing medicinal use of psychedelic mushroom compound psilocybin. So that's pretty good. So 2 Virginia lawmakers have introduced legislation that would allow the use of the psychedelic drug psilocybin for medicinal purposes and decrease penalties for possession, citing research on its effectiveness. So I think what's important about this is Virginia is right next to Washington, D.C., and it's a really big state. It has a big voice, and it's kind of a southern state in a lot of ways. And that, I think, would help shift the narrative in other places in America's South, thinking Alabama, Georgia, Florida, things like that. So I think that could be really, really helpful. So just really amazing news. I'm just happy to see that kind of stuff going on. What else is going on out here? I read an article on the the Colorado bill that passed recently, had some really interesting stuff around getting people to get their record expunged or sealed. So it's not happening automatically in Colorado. You actually have to go through and petition a court in some way to have your record sealed, which isn't that hard, but an interesting law firm, I think it was Vincente Sidberg, actually held a clinic. I think it was on Saturday, something like January 7, maybe. And it was a full-on clinic to just help people submit their paperwork to make sure the courts seal their records. So really, really kind of cool to see some law firms that have been involved in this bill and some really important cannabis work as well actually go forward and help individuals who need that kind of help. I think that's really, really helpful. And yeah, there's this other article. It's a really dark article. I read so here's the title. It's from thecityweekly.net. I think this is from Salt Lake. Dr. Strangelove. Accused killer, Dr. Robert Weitzel, has a troubled career, with plenty of defenders. So this is like a really fascinating article. I think that leans into the psychedelic space a little bit. Not exactly sure to what degree that's the case yet. I'm going to keep digging here. But he's got a lot of complaints against him, a number of court cases. He's been drug tested plenty. He's working in geriatric psychiatry, so kind of inpatient work, just trying to get their minds straight enough so they can go back to a normal care facility and not stay in a hospital. But people were dying. And it's looking like, but according to the article, that he would actually give folks a bunch of methadone. Was it methadone? No, it was morphine, sorry. And kind of tell nurses to back off on their monitoring, kind of hoping to have them fade away, I suppose, and out of their pre-existing conditions. And this is really hotly debated. So it looks at times like assisted suicide, looks at times like, he's just playing God. Other times I'm reading this stuff and I can't really tell, if maybe people are just going kind of bananas at him. I can't tell, but it's just good to know, I think, in the psychedelic space that there's doctors outside of psychedelics that also have ethical situations pop up, sometimes criminal. So, we don't know what the verdict's going to be in all these, sentences in various court cases, but time will tell. Yeah. So, we might be really freaked out about, a couple scenarios that we've heard about ethics wise in psychedelics. Generally, this is a really fringe scenario, in my opinion, in medicine generally, and like psychiatry specifically. So this isn't the norm, but when we see it, we should, try to bring it to the courts, right? We need to make it really public and make sure folks know that they're safe in these weird psychedelic environments. Yeah. So what else is going on in the news? We've been really busy last week. Kyle and our team member Johanna have been in Jamaica running a retreat for Vital. Apparently went extraordinarily well. We partnered with the folks at Ottman Retreats, and one of our facilitators is Carla Kiefer. It's amazing having her. I'm told everything went stellar. People are really happy about their experience there, especially with Vital. Yeah, so just really great to get that kind of feedback. And I'm really just interested to see what happens with the second one. So they're down there for a couple more weeks, and then they'll kick off another retreat shortly. So our Vital students have an experiential requirement. We don't necessarily make them come to our events. We we're actually trying to radically revision what our events even look like. But we do want people to have some sort of experience as part of their training. And this partnership with Ottman, we were able to actually get people using psilocybin containing mushrooms in Jamaica where it's legal. So really a cool partnership, and excited that all these folks were able to have that in a couple different kinds of scenarios. I think we had a few different kinds of styles of trip experience. So meaning, some looked more like one-on-one, and there was stuff that I think was more grouped up, kind of like a holotropic breathwork scenario where there's a sitter-breather pair, like a tripper-sitter pair. So I think that's pretty interesting. Yeah, it sounds like they're having a lovely time in Jamaica, so can't wait to get Kyle back full-time in the office, but soon enough. Some other fun things in the news. I think there was a New York Times article and also an NBC News article. Title on this NBC News one: psychedelic therapies are on the horizon, but who will administer the drugs? Schools are ramping up training programs to teach therapists and other practitioners how to safely give psychedelics to patients. So just really good to see that there's some momentum discussing training here. And I wish we got a little bit more of a mention in there, but we'll work on that. But it's really good to see that universities are picking it up. Like CIS partnered with some Massachusetts groups, like the Mass General Hospital Training Group. There's also the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, New York, Naropa in Boulder. CIS is obviously the hub for a lot of this, but there's really great partnerships, I think, with the UC Berkeley campus. And it actually also looks like there's some training going on at San Jose, or actually, no, MAPS is just there. So I thought MAPS was in Santa Cruz. Maybe this article's a little, got a couple errors in it. Anyway, so it's just good to see that the discussion around training is getting normalized, and people are understanding that there's going to be a huge need for education. I think everybody is going to need a lot of education on this topic, from politicians, police, to school teachers, to therapists, to judges. Like how I think I've shared this on the show a couple times. One of my friends got in big trouble for mushrooms a bunch of years ago and was about to get his sentence, and the judges didn't really know. The judge, and I think even the DA, the district attorney, prosecuting attorney, didn't know what to sentence him with. And they went back and said, oh, because there's all this good data, oh, like, this doesn't look very harmful. This looks actually very helpful. So because it's illegal, we're still going to pass a sentence here. And I think it was only like a week of time in prison relative to like months, if not years of time. So pretty good win. Well, anyway, back to this NBC article here. There's even references to holotropic breathwork, which is really great. So I'm, just excited. More people need training. Training should come from everywhere. If you want training, check out what we've got to offer. Navigating Psychedelics, you can always take that in a pre-recorded form. There's also Vital. We have a ketamine and trauma series that's extraordinary. Carl Jung and psychedelics course, talking about like the shadow side of psychedelia, I think, and much more. So we've got a ton of stuff over at Psychedelic Education Center if you want to learn. And our material for Vital is all available there as well. I think vitalpsychedelictraining.com is the direct website, though. Any questions, hit us up on that stuff, info@psychedelicstoday.com. Cool. So what else is happening? This is a really weird find. Futurism.com has a kind of sub imprint called Neoscope. And on January 5, our friends over at Medicinal Mindfulness got some press. So the title here: startup trying to test whether people on DMT experience a shared alien universe. It's subtitled, Do Androids Dream of Mechanical Elves? Play on the self-transforming machine elves that Terence McKenna always talks about. Yeah, so they're looking at what the Medicinal Mindfulness group is calling DMTX, extended state DMT stuff. And we talked about this a little bit in the Andrew Gallimore episode we just did. And we've talked about this a bunch in the past. Actually, we even have a DMTX training course on our platform. Daniel, who's the head over there at Medicinal Mindfulness, has developed a really robust trip training platform because he wants to take this very seriously. How do people know if they could stay inside a DMT experience for substantially longer than the 5 or 10 minute normal experience. So DMTX, they'll use an infusion pump to actually infuse a test subject's veins with DMT, and they can actually create a stable state of the experience. So it looks like they've actually applied to the FDA for this study, which is really interesting. I always thought they were going to do this overseas somewhere where DMT can be maybe more legal, but it's very, very interesting. They're going forward with it. And the phrasing is kind of interesting. Sometimes in this article, they're saying, oh, can two people in a DMT experience have some sort of telepathic communication inside the experience? Find that interesting phrasing. The way I understood it was, how do we actually go into these states and become fluent and be able to operate in there? And when those strange alien things show up, the things that don't appear to be human inside the DMT experience, can we learn how to communicate with them? And what are they? What is their ontological status? Is it purely just a mind construct? Are we actually interfacing with something more interesting and spiritual? Who knows? But that's what I thought the project was for. Anyway, we'll report more on all this stuff from Daniel and medicinal mindfulness when we learn more. And Daniel, if you're listening, always let us know. Happy to spread more fun information about DMTX and medicinal mindfulness. What else? The WHO, this is from Psychedelic Alpha, just actually made a kind of generic drug name for 5-MeO-DMT. Mebufotenin, something like that. Mebufotenin. So they wanted it to be a little bit different from the Mebufotenin, which has already been named. But, how do we suggest it comes from the toad? I think ME is probably the methoxylated part, and then bufo from the toad, and tenin. I wish I studied Latin in the past. Maybe in the future. But yeah, it's just fascinating that the WHO is paying attention to the point where we're actually making some cool progress. Elsewhere on the web, friend of the show, Mark Plotkin and Brian Murarescu have been on Tim Ferriss. I think this was just the other day. It's one of the biggest podcasts in the world, episode 646. So they got to talk about the Eleusinian mysteries and the immortality key that Brian pushes. And yeah, there's also some stuff here about the pagan continuity hypothesis. So that's cool. We also got a message from legendary psychedelic researcher Roland Griffiths. Many of you know he's been diagnosed, I think, about a year ago with stage 4 cancer, and is trying to make sure he has an amazing, lasting impact. He already has. He's had the tenacity to deal with bureaucrats and make sure his research was able to be executed on. He did a lot of pioneering research at Hopkins, and it's because he had that kind of patience. He had the right personality to be able to interface with a lot of bureaucracy, paperwork, etc., and the long timelines. So he's trying to develop this fund. It's called the Roland Griffiths Research Fund in Psychedelic Research on Secular Spirituality and Well-Being. A friend had a conversation with Roland not that long ago, and it looks like Roland's suggesting we need to create a whole suite of new institutions, according to Roland, to make sure that our movement doesn't get over medicalized, doesn't become absolutely dominated by the medical frame. I think the medical frame is super important. I think Roland would agree too. We just don't want psychiatry to absolutely own this thing. And that's been something that we've talked about endlessly on here. There's so many other routes to access this stuff and ways people can be safe. So I just want to read the rest of this email here from Roland. The rationale for this project is based on my decades of meditation practice and my work with psychedelics. Many of us dearly want humankind to awaken with gratitude to the precious gift of awareness, i.e., sentience or consciousness. We know from research and experience that psychedelics can occasion profound awakenings that have substantial and sustained personal meaning and spiritual significance. We also know that such experiences can provide enduring positive changes in prosocial attitudes and behavior, opening individuals to the realization that we are all in this together, with the attendant impulse towards mutual caretaking in service of human flourishing. Rigorous empirical research with psychedelics represents a uniquely powerful scientific tool for systematically understanding the nature and impact of these awakening experiences. I truly believe this line of research may ultimately be critical to the survival of our species. This project is also unique in that it is entirely dependent on philanthropic support and, as an endowment, will be managed to grow over time and continue in perpetuity. Almost all current psychedelic research is focused on medical therapeutics in patients. While we can expect this therapeutic research to continue to grow, fueled by increasing commercial and NIH funding, there is virtually no support for what I believe to be the most consequential direction for future psychedelic research, namely the impact of psychedelic substances on broadly defined spirituality and well-being in healthy volunteers. This website, we'll paste a link in the show notes, provides detailed information about the endowment, including the founders agreement that specifies the provisions that hold Johns Hopkins accountable for assuring that the endowment is used solely to support the purpose and intent of the endowment in perpetuity. And that was signed by Roland. So y'all can check that out and dig in deeper. There's, a lot there. Roland is suggesting that psychedelics can possibly help us save the planet. And I tend to agree. Psychedelics would have to be used the right way. And, one of my favorite ideas here is how do we actually make engineering and massive scientific progress on things that would have extraordinary dents on our environmental situation. So, what if we were able to, 500x battery technology or wind or solar or nuclear for that matter? If you 100x'd how safe it is and how, maybe some engineering around a smart grid would be really good. But, even small scale local stuff like permaculture, if we thought about permaculture on a farm perspective or a town perspective, microgrid, we have all the tech already. Better tech obviously is better if, it's going to last a long time. But we have a lot of technologies, but we do need more. And I think that's kind of in part what he's getting at here. And yeah. And I love the idea of this awakening research. Like, what does it actually mean when somebody awakens like this? Roland is famously a meditator. So he has a lot to say on that topic. And a lot of material there is around, kind of like a Buddhist style, kind of secular awakening, which is certainly an interesting and powerful experience for sure. So I think there's just there's some value here that we can mine from this organization. So we'll have some links in the show notes for that. hopkinspsychedelic.org is a great place to start though. Yeah. And finally, I think we just learned that there's a group at UCLA working to formalize their program and have a much larger program. So we know that Charlie Grobe and Alicia Danforth at UCLA did a lot of really interesting early MDMA work. And I'm hopeful that there's going to be some more work, really, really substantial work coming from UCLA soon. So here's this email. Got it from Connor Murray, who's kind of working underneath or under the mentorship of Charlie Grobe. I'm reading this from him. Here at UCLA, we're getting our psychedelic studies initiative off the ground. A first step has been creating this survey, link here. We can link to that, to find out if people have benefited from psilocybin treatments, micro or macro doses, specifically for substance use related issues like drug, tobacco, and alcohol addiction. These data will directly impact UCLA's ability to obtain large government grants for laboratory neuroimaging studies to understand the neural mechanisms associated with psilocybin's efficacy to treat addictions. Yeah, that's about it. But it's really, really great to see that UCLA is getting things rolling, and they might actually have another, substantial move in the direction of understanding addiction. Once we get some really good data there, we could really, I think, make some Probably get a lot more government funding. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. And hopefully then people will get more treatment. Yeah, another weird one. Mixmag.net. This is kind of like a music industry mag to a degree. DJs get it. The headline is, New Zealand authorities believe 4 kilograms of MDMA was flushed down a toilet. It was discovered after a spike in the amount of drug was found in Auckland, in the Auckland wastewater system. So we'll link to that one as well. And I guess the main takeaway from that is I think there's a way that law enforcement and just various monitors can watch a population in their consumption levels. So I don't think this works with all drugs, obviously, but many it does. But the fact that they could see just a huge amount of MDMA show up in the wastewater is really interesting. Yeah. So, all right. I think that's it for now, everybody. Just remember, Convergence is coming up March 30 through April 2. It's going to be super fun. We have live music. We've got a lot of room for engaging conversation. A lot of beautiful food's going to be there. Again, the nightlife is going to be crazy fun. We've done a really great job curating that. And, the amount of people we have coming to speak is extraordinary. We've got so much programming over the 4 days, and we'd love to see you there. So yeah, Carl Hart will be there. He's one of our heroes. Hamilton Morris, another hero of mine. There's just so many really amazing folks. Who else? Sutton King, I think, is going to be there. Come on, Joe. Steve D'Angelo, who was really early in the cannabis scene. He's going to be there. All sorts of our friends are going to be there. And I think the folks over at East Institute are going to be there as well. They're doing some really interesting stuff domestically. So stay tuned for that. What else? Yeah, there's just so many fun people. Eventually, we'll do a whole episode just listing everybody that's going to be there. But that's not now. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, I hope to see you at Convergence, or, if you want to come to Vital, check that out, Vital Psychedelic Training. You can learn more about what we've got lined up. And microdosing course. So we've got a really great microdosing course developed by Jim Fadiman and Adam Bramlage. That's the microdosing masterclass at Psychedelic Education Center. We'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. And that is probably the best online training around microdosing available today. And a lot of really never before reported data in there. So check that out. And all right. Finally, that's it. All right. Thanks for bearing with me on this monologue of Psychedelic Weekly. And we will see you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Our first in-person event, Convergence, is coming together. We are still finalizing our programming and can't wait to share the variety of talks, workshops, ceremonies, musical acts, art, installations, and networking opportunities that will take place March 30th through April 2nd. We are taking over Wisdome, an immersive dome park in Los Angeles. We've got 5 massive domes, one with a main stage featuring keynotes by Carl Hart, Hamilton Morris, Sutton King, and more you can view online. The Tea Lounge next door will hold space for various group takeovers, so whether you want to network with investors, students, clinicians, veterans, or women in the industry, grab some tea from Brothers Apothecary and make some connections. The intimate nature of the venue allows you to get up close and personal with speakers during Joe's fireside chats with legends like Zach Leary and David Bronner. Our Transcend sponsor, the Buena Vida, is co-creating our VIP double-decker shipping container space with live music and other healing activations. Exhibitor spaces are almost sold out, but we've still got a few domes up for grabs and other immersive experiences available for sponsors. Email me, alexa@psychedelicstoday.com, and we can create something amazing together. Ticket prices are increasing on January 16th, so make sure to grab yours now with code PTInsider10.